Imagine an Africa where electricity flows through the air effortlessly. No cables, no grid, no power cuts. Just clean, continuous energy moving through the atmosphere like an invisible river. What you're about to hear is not science fiction. It's a real breakthrough that has quietly begun reshaping the continent. And at the center of it all stands one man, Maxwell. His wireless power network is spreading, growing, and accelerating at a pace that global energy giants never predicted, and now it can no longer be stopped. The first tests stunned local communities. Homes that had been in darkness for years suddenly lit up, without a single wire being installed. Power meters read zero, yet lights glowed, devices charged, and entire neighborhoods came alive long after sunset. Engineers who examined the system were left speechless. The network didn't rely on traditional grids, poles, transformers, or buried cables. Instead, it transmitted energy through the air using a system that blended resonance, frequency manipulation, and microgeneration in ways few had ever seen before. Word spread faster than expected. In remote villages, people gathered to watch small receivers glow with wireless power. In cities, technicians followed trails of electromagnetic signatures stretching across rooftops and open fields. Everywhere the signals reached, lights flickered on as if awakening from a long sleep. The most surprising part? The network adapted. It strengthened itself the more devices connected, creating a self-expanding energy web that grew organically, like digital roots spreading across Africa. Global corporations were not prepared. Companies that built their fortunes on cables, batteries, and grid infrastructure watched with rising concern. Entire markets, from copper mining to lithium battery production, could be shaken by a system that requires neither. The wireless network didn't need billion-dollar installations or massive power plants. It needed only small, coordinated nodes that captured and redistributed energy continuously. For developing regions, it was a miracle. For energy giants, it was a warning. Governments began sending delegations to study the phenomenon. Some arrived quietly, hoping to understand the technology before the world caught on. Others attempted to negotiate early access, believing that if they could secure even a small piece of the innovation, they could leap ahead of global competitors. The demand was growing faster than anyone expected, yet Maxwell and his team remained calm, focused, and unshaken by the attention. They knew what they had built, a system designed to free communities from unstable grids, high costs, and outdated infrastructure. As the network expanded, something even more astonishing happened. The power distribution remained stable. There were no crashes, no overloads, no blackouts. Tests showed that the energy efficiency actually increased with distance, defying the limitations of conventional wireless power systems. In regions where high-voltage lines were too expensive to build, Maxwell's network spread effortlessly, lighting up areas once dismissed as too remote to serve. But with every breakthrough comes resistance. Critics question the science, labeling it impossible or unproven. Industry experts demanded peer reviews. Skeptics insisted it must be a hoax. Yet the lights continued to shine. Entire districts that previously depended on diesel generators were now drawing energy from the air. Farmers powered irrigation pumps without buying fuel. Schools ran computers for the first time. Small businesses extended their working hours, driven by free, reliable power. And still, the network grew. International observers began realizing that something bigger was unfolding, a shift that could alter the balance of global energy. The African continent, often treated as a consumer of imported technology, now appeared to be on the verge of leading a new era. A future where electricity didn't need wires, substations, or fuel. A future where nations could leapfrog decades of infrastructure development with a single technological leap. The more people tried to slow it down, the more unstoppable it became. Attempts to suppress the innovation began quietly. Large corporations commissioned reports claiming the network was unstable. Lobby groups pushed narratives about unverified technology and lack of compliance. But in the villages and towns where the wireless power nodes were active, people simply shrugged. Their lights worked. Their refrigerators hummed. Their devices charged through the night without interruption. No blackout, no maintenance crew. No rising electricity bills. For them, the truth wasn't in the debates, it was in the glow of their living rooms. As more communities switched to the wireless network, something remarkable happened. Resilience increased. Storms that once destroyed power lines no longer caused outages. Rural clinics that depended on unreliable grids were now running essential equipment day and night. For the first time, some communities didn't fear the dark. They could see their own future illuminated in front of them, literally. And it didn't stop there. Engineers noticed patterns emerging in the energy flow, like a living ecosystem adjusting to demand. When more devices connected, the network automatically balanced itself. When one receiver failed, nearby nodes compensated instantly. This wasn't just wireless power, it was intelligent wireless power. A system designed to grow stronger with use. That's when global attention intensified. Teams from Europe, Asia, and North America began arriving in Africa, eager to study, verify, or disprove the technology. Some came with open minds. Others came with agendas. A few tried to replicate the network in controlled environments, only to discover that without the distributed node architecture developed by Maxwell's team, the efficiency dropped dramatically. But in Africa, the real system continued to expand. Even without government funding or major investors, communities themselves began installing receivers and micronodes, forming a citizen-driven energy grid like nothing the world had seen before. It was no longer a project, it was becoming a movement. And movements are hard to stop. Within months, wireless power pockets appeared across several regions. Towns began interlinking their systems, creating wide-area fields that stretched across entire districts. Local leaders reported massive economic boosts, with small industries running longer hours, students studying after dark, and farmers automating tasks that once took days. Meanwhile, international corporations adjusted their strategies. Some shifted from denial to interest, others from skepticism to negotiation. A handful began quietly exploring partnerships, hoping to integrate their products with the wireless ecosystem rather than compete against it. Through it all, Maxwell remained strangely quiet, not seeking fame, not holding flashy press conferences. While the world speculated, he kept refining the technology, strengthening the nodes, and designing the next generation of wireless systems that would operate at even greater distances. And then came the rumors, whispers of a large-scale demonstration planned for an entire African city. A test so bold, so ambitious, that if it succeeded, the global energy map would shift permanently. Whether the world was ready or not, Africa was preparing for a moment that could redefine everything. The next morning, as the sun rose over East Africa, a convoy of engineers rolled quietly into a remote village in northern Kenya. There were no reporters, no cameras, only local community leaders, a school principal, and a small group of curious children waiting at the dusty crossroads. From the back of a truck, the team unloaded a sleek, black device no larger than a refrigerator. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though absorbing the rising heat of the desert. The villagers watched silently. They had seen solar panels before, diesel generators, even failed development projects, but nothing like this. Maxwell's chief engineer stepped forward and gently touched the device. A soft hum spread through the air. Lights in the school flickered. Once, then glowed steadily, brighter than anyone in the village had ever seen. The water pump, for the first time in months, roared to life. A fan in the clinic spun. Even the old radio on the chief's porch tuned itself and played a clear signal from a station hundreds of kilometers away. The children gasped. The adults froze. Within minutes, phone batteries, dead for days, began charging wirelessly in people's pockets. A nurse stepped out of the clinic, stunned, staring at equipment that had never worked due to unstable electricity. The village was awake, alive, connected. The chief approached the engineers, touched the device with trembling hands, and whispered, "You have brought us a sun that never sets." Word spread faster than satellite signals. By afternoon, motorcycle taxis were racing between villages carrying one message. He's done it again. The breakthrough reached Nairobi, Lagos, Addis Ababa, and beyond. People shared videos of lights turning on in places that had never known electricity. Farmers recorded crops irrigating through the night. Students filmed themselves studying under bright lamps after generations had grown up in darkness. Across Africa, something was shifting, quietly but unmistakably. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, in a glass-walled boardroom in Europe, executives from a major energy corporation stared at a report on the table. The room was silent, heavy. The document showed a map of Africa with hundreds of small dots, each one a wireless node activated in the last 72 hours. One executive exhaled sharply. "This is accelerating too fast," he muttered. Another leaned forward. "We've spent decades building grids. If this continues, we lose the entire market." A younger analyst hesitated before speaking. We may be underestimating the social impact. People aren't just receiving power. They're becoming independent. The oldest executive clenched his jaw. "Independence is a threat to our business model. We need a response now." But response to what? A technology with no fuel, no wires, no dependency. Something they couldn't control, predict, or buy. Back in Africa, nighttime fell, but the continent did not darken. From Tanzania's plains to Zambia's copper villages, from rural Ethiopia to southern Malawi, small pockets of blue and gold light sparkled across the landscape like new constellations. Drone footage captured something breathtaking, entire rural regions glowing in patterns that resembled a neural network firing to life. Africa was waking up electrically, wirelessly, and unstoppably. In a dim workshop in Harare, Maxwell stood quietly beside his team, watching the expanding map on a monitor. His face carried no arrogance, only calm certainty. "It's happening faster than we expected," an engineer said. Maxwell nodded. "People don't need to understand the technology. They just need to feel the impact." "What about the pushback?" another asked. Maxwell looked up, eyes steady. "Pushback only means we're close." Suddenly, a new alert pinged on the map, another node activating. Then another. Then 10 more. His assistant stepped closer. "Sir, we're receiving a request. It's from a region that has never had stable power. They want to know how soon we can reach them." Maxwell smiled. "Tell them, we're already on the way." And Africa kept glowing, brighter by the hour. Within hours, the request turned into a flood. Messages poured in from communities spread across deserts, forests, mountains. People who had lived generations without reliable electricity were now asking when their village, their clinic, their school would glow next. Maxwell's team, though exhausted, kept pushing. By midnight, a convoy of vans and pickups was moving through the outskirts of Mozambique. Inside them were devices wrapped in thermal foam, tools, spare modules, and a dozen engineers who hadn't slept in 2 days. Yet no one complained. They knew what happened every time one of these units switched on, and they wanted to witness it again. As they crossed a narrow bridge into a fishing town, the convoy halted. Ahead, dozens of villagers stood silently on both sides of the road, holding lanterns and phones, forming a corridor of light for the arriving team. No speeches. No ceremony. Only gratitude. The engineers stepped out and carried the device to a small hill overlooking the shoreline. The wind was sharp, blowing from the Indian Ocean, but the team worked quickly. Cables were connected, not for power, but for calibration. A diagnostic panel lit up. The device hummed. Then activation. A soft pulse rolled outward like a wave. Within seconds, the village transformed. Dim lanterns flickered off as bright. White lights blinked alive above doorways. Refrigerators rumbled for the first time in months. Street lamps, long abandoned, burst into glowing life. Children laughed, running to the beach as the shoreline became illuminated, revealing fishing boats rocking gently under a newly lit sky. The town erupted in cheers. A fisherman dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. His wife touched a clinic sign that had never been illuminated before. A teenage girl held her phone high, tears streaming down her face as it charged wirelessly in her hand. "Mama, it's working. It's really working." But far from the celebrations, in a private hangar in Johannesburg, a chartered jet landed quietly. 3 men in dark suits stepped out. They were met by a stern-looking official who handed them a metallic case. Inside the case were documents, maps, and satellite images of Maxwell's expanding network. One of the men spoke coldly. "He's igniting the entire region. If this spreads across borders, every major energy investment for the next 30 years becomes worthless." Another tapped his finger on a photo of Maxwell. "We need to control this man, or silence him." The official closed the case. "Careful. People love him. Interfere with him, and you might trigger something bigger than an energy crisis." The third man exhaled slowly. "Then we'll start quietly." Meanwhile, back in Harare, Maxwell reviewed the latest deployment graphs. The curves were no longer linear, they were vertical. Village after village was joining the network, forming a web of wireless light that stretched over hundreds of kilometers. His assistant approached, her voice uneasy. "Sir, we intercepted something. A communication. Not local." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "Let me hear it." She hesitated, then pressed play. A crackling voice emerged. "Contain influence, halt expansion before Q3, repeat, halt expansion." Maxwell closed his eyes for a moment. "They're coming, aren't they?" she whispered. He opened them, calm as ever. They always come when something is about to change. Another alert popped up on the screen. Another node lighting up. This time deep in the Congo Basin, a region unreachable by most development agencies. He pointed at the map. "This is what matters. Not politics. Not corporations. People." The assistant stepped closer. "Maxwell, what's the plan?" He smiled faintly. "The same plan as always. We move faster than they can stop us." Outside the workshop, a group of young volunteers, fresh recruits, loaded another batch of devices onto a truck. They were determined, energized, unstoppable. And somewhere in the dark African night, a new cluster of lights flickered alive, glowing like stars being born. Africa was no longer waiting to be powered. Africa was powering itself. But as Africa powered itself, something else was happening, something no one on Maxwell's team had anticipated. The wireless network began to reveal patterns. At first, the engineers thought it was a glitch. Nodes across Malawi, Zambia, and Tanzania were syncing themselves automatically, adjusting frequency loads and redistributing energy without any command input. The system was learning. Maxwell stared at the data streaming across the monitor. Self-correction, predictive routing, signal optimization. None of these features had been fully implemented yet. "Who's controlling this?" one of the engineers asked. Maxwell leaned forward, squinting at a sudden spike on the graph. "No one," he murmured. "It's doing it on its own." The assistant swallowed hard. "So the network is evolving?" Maxwell nodded slowly. "It's becoming smarter with every installation." Before anyone could process this, a frantic call came through from a deployment unit stationed in northern Zambia. The voice on the line was trembling. "Sir, you need to see this. The device, it's expanding the radius on its own. Nearly double what we calibrated." Electricity surged across the region. Homes that had not even been connected lit up anyway. Entire neighborhoods came alive with a single pulse. The team in Zambia sounded unnerved. "We didn't push the radius increase, sir. The device just reached out." Maxwell's brows furrowed. But before he could respond, his assistant rushed in with breaking news. "Sir, it's trending globally. Look." She turned a screen toward him. Hashtags were exploding on social media. Hashtag Africa Glows. Hashtag Maxwell Network. Hashtag Power from the Air. Hashtag Light Without Wires. But mixed among them was something darker. Hashtag Too Much Power. Hashtag Corporate Threat. Hashtag Stop the Network. And then a new video appeared, an anonymous leak. It showed 3 of Maxwell's devices being loaded into a private cargo plane. The clip was filmed secretly, shaking, low quality, but unmistakable. A voice narrated, "They're trying to smuggle the technology out of Africa." Online panic erupted. Was someone trying to steal it? Take control of it? Shut it down? Comment sections exploded. Some celebrated the technology. Others feared it, and some threatened retaliation if anyone interfered. Maxwell watched the video quietly. His assistant looked shocked. "Sir, what do we do? People are terrified. People are angry." Maxwell took a deep breath. This is what happens when the world sees something they can't control. He tapped a button on the screen, enlarging the map of active nodes now spreading like a web across the continent. But they don't realize the technology is no longer in one place. It's everywhere. Even if someone takes a device, the network will rebuild itself. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly. But it wasn't thunder. A helicopter was descending behind the facility, unmarked, matte black, blades slicing the night. The security team ran out instantly. Maxwell stepped toward the window, watching it land. The assistant's voice shook. "Sir, who is that?" Maxwell exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. "Not who," he said softly, "but what they intend to do." The helicopter door slid open, and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out, holding a dossier stamped with an emblem Maxwell recognized immediately, an organization that had opposed disruptive technologies for decades. A global watchdog. Unaccountable. Untouchable. The man looked directly at Maxwell's window, almost as if he could see him. Maxwell tightened his jaw. The assistant whispered, "Is he here to shut us down?" Maxwell didn't blink. "No," he said, voice firm. "He's here because he realizes he can't." Outside, the man began walking toward the entrance, slow, calculated, confident. Inside, Maxwell turned to his team. "Stay calm. Keep working. Whatever happens next, the network doesn't stop." The lights across Africa flickered, then surged brighter than ever. Something was coming, but so was a new power Africa had never known. The man in the charcoal suit stepped inside the building, his footsteps echoing through the corridor like a warning bell. Maxwell didn't move. He simply watched as the stranger approached, silent, composed, unreadable. When they finally stood face to face, the man opened the dossier and spoke in a cold, measured voice. "Mr. Chikumbutso, the world is not ready for this. Your network threatens global markets, international agreements, and billions in existing infrastructure. You must surrender operational control." Maxwell didn't flinch. "You didn't come here to negotiate. You came here to intimidate." The man closed the folder slowly. "You have no idea the pressure behind this request. Nations, corporations, alliances, you're disrupting all of them." Maxwell stepped closer. "That's the point." The man's expression tightened. "This is your last warning." Maxwell turned and walked toward the large window overlooking Harare. The entire city glowed, streets, clinics, homes, markets, powered by an invisible network that no one could shut down anymore. He spoke without turning around. "You can take devices. You can threaten teams. But you cannot stop an idea once people have seen its power." The man in the suit hesitated. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Maxwell continued, "This network belongs to Africa. It grows with every village that lights up. Every connection strengthens the next one. You can unplug a generator, but you cannot unplug a continent that has chosen to stand." Outside, as if responding to his words, the wireless grid pulsed. A soft glow rippled across the night sky, visible even from the horizon. The man backed away, realizing the truth. It was too late. Maxwell's assistant entered the room quietly. "They're leaving," she whispered. Maxwell nodded. "They have no choice." Moments later, the helicopter lifted off, its blades whipping violently against the air before disappearing into the dark clouds. It was gone, retreating, not victorious. Inside the lab, Maxwell's team gathered around him. They weren't nervous anymore. They weren't afraid. They were determined. One of the young engineers asked, "Sir, what now?" Maxwell smiled, the kind of smile that carried decades of struggle and the weight of a continent's hope. "Now," he said, "we go further." And as dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight crept across Africa, revealing something extraordinary. New nodes activating, new towns lighting up, new regions joining the network. From Zimbabwe to Malawi, to Zambia, to Congo, to Kenya. The map lit up like a constellation being born. The world watched in disbelief. Africa was no longer following. It was leading. And nothing, no organization, no corporation, no power, could stop what had already begun. Maxwell stepped outside, feeling the warm morning air. A child ran past him, holding a bright lamp powered through the wireless network, laughing as the light shimmered in her hands. He looked up at the rising sun. "Africa," he whispered. "Welcome to the future." Fade out.